Hello and welcome to Melee's Turnwheel, the series that takes a retroactive look at the Fire Emblem series chapter by chapter. I'm your host, I'm Melee Kirby, and today we're taking it back to chapters 15, 16, 17, and the Tower of Valni from Fire Emblem, the Sacred Stones. It is really goddamn hot today. I was seeing in the 80s earlier, like high 80s, but I'm pretty sure, like when I was driving around, my car has a thermometer and it was saying, it was saying 95, I think, which felt more realistic to me. I'm not 100% sure which it was, but either way, it's very hot. And normally I turn off my AC and my fans when I'm recording, just to make sure there's no background noise. But today I do not have it in me. It is just too damn hot. I've been having the AC going all day, and it's just not getting any cooler. So they're staying on. I will obviously be filtering them out, and I did some testing. It seems like it'll be fine. I don't think it'll pick up too loud, and you might at the most you might hear like a humming sound in the background, but it'll be very quiet, and shouldn't be any issue. But that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was mentioned in case anyone picked up on it. I think we can go ahead and just get right into the question for last time, which was, what do you prefer between Erica Route and Ephraim Route? Now, I'm pretty sure I only got one response. I've been checking back a couple times. This is one that I was honestly expecting to get a little bit more response to, which isn't, like not in a oh wow, I can't believe you guys didn't respond kind of way. I was just surprised, because sometimes I ask questions that are like, who's your favorite red-haired dark mage who appears in a GBA Fire Emblem or some shit like that, where there's, it's I can understand if people just weren't interested enough to answer the question. I was just kind of surprised that not more people wanted to weigh in about Erica Route versus Ephraim Route. I did get one response from Solaris via Spotify comment. Solaris said, I think you've summarized it succinctly in previous episodes. Ephraim is the better route. I'll still go for Erica Route more often than not, mostly for nostalgia. And that's valid. I don't know that I would describe anything that I've ever done as being succinct. I tend to yap and ramble quite a bit, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I agree that Ephraim Route is the better route. I was giving pretty much glowing praise for the Ephraim Route chapters, whereas I don't think most of the Erica Route chapters are bad by any means, but a couple of them were good and fun, and I enjoyed them. A couple of them were like kind of just middle of the road, and then there were a couple that I legitimately did not like. So I'll take Ephraim Route any day of the week. I do, I've played this game, I don't know, probably like, how many times have I played this game? A lot. It's been like probably like 6 or 7 or 8 times, give or take, in that ballpark. And I've probably gone, I've definitely gone Ephraim Route more, but I have gone Erica Route a few times as well. So I'll do both from time to time. I think both of them have their merit, especially if I ever want to like use Sala and get Sala early. That's a reason to go Erica Route for sure. Okay, yeah, that's everything. That's the only response I got. So let's go ahead and move on to the question for next time, which I have actually been thinking about for a little while. What I want to know from you guys this time is, what is your favorite class in the series that only appears in one game, or like very, very few games? So the reason, just to give an example, the reason that I'm bringing this up today is because we technically recruited Noel at the end of last episode, but we haven't used them at all in gameplay. So I'm going to be talking about Noel from a gameplay perspective today, and one of the things I'm going to be talking about is his mostly unique access to the Summoner class, which is a class that is exclusive to FE8. It's very unique and distinct within this game, and it essentially has never come back. There's like some enemy classes that kind of do the same thing in FE2 and FE15, and there might be some like DLC stuff that I'm not aware of. It's possible, but for the most part, it has only ever been in this one game. So that's like the example off the top of my head. But there's also like plenty of other one-off classes, things like Shapeshifter or whatever it's called, Zane's class from FE 1 and 3, and I mean, I guess technically that one's been in like 4 games, but you guys know what I mean, right? Like only one like iteration of Fire Emblem, right? And it's come back basically never since then. Let's see, what are some other good examples? I think Ballistician from Fates is maybe a good example. Or Fates, and that one's in a couple games also. Rare classes, unusual classes, uncommon and unconventional classes, I think is maybe the better way to phrase it, instead of just, classes that have appeared in only one game, because that's not true for most of them. Most classes have appeared in multiple games, but some of them are only dabbled in very lightly and then basically left behind forever. So yeah, I'm sure there's more that you guys can think of. What is your favorite one-off class, mostly, in the Fire Emblem series? Let you leave your answers either via Spotify comment or at Kirby on Twitter and Blue Sky, or email terminalpodcast@gmail.com. I feel like I'm stuttering a lot today. I don't know what that's about. I think I'm tired, maybe? I'm not sure. I feel like I can't talk right today. Okay, I think that's about everything. So I believe we can go ahead and get started with our chapters for the episode, starting with Chapter 15, Scorched Sands. So, the way this is structured, obviously this is the chapter where Erica Route and Ephraim Route reconverge back into one single game. However, the way that this chapter is structured is pretty different, depending on whether you're coming off of Erica mode or Ephraim mode. In Erica mode, you do not have any amount of time between this map and the last one. So you just have to go straight into chapter 15, which is honestly, I think Erica Route is the easier chapter, or the easier route overall. But this version of chapter 15, where you have to go straight from chapter 14, which is not like incredibly easy. I don't think it's like a super easy chapter by any means. And then directly into chapter 15, which I personally think is quite difficult. I think that's a big step up. Maybe I know that the different versions of these, like Chapter 15 Erica, coming off of Erica Route, and Chapter 15 coming off of Ephraim Route, they might have like different enemy placements and reinforcements and stuff like that. That is the case for most of the chapters. I'm not going to be talking extensively about the differences between Erica Route and Ephraim Route in that sense. Like which chapters are easier or harder from the sense of different enemies being there or whatever. Mostly because I don't know all of the changes, and most of them are like fairly well documented, but it's usually very minor stuff, right? It's usually like, oh, there's a druid here instead of a sage, or they come from like the top right instead of the top left. It's mostly stuff that's not going to make a substantial difference on your play experience. So I'm just going to talk about the chapters that I played, which is obviously all coming off of Ephraim Route. I did choose to continue from Ephraim Route. I'm pretty sure I made it pretty clear that I was going to last time, but just in case it wasn't obvious, I stuck with Ephraim Route. And so we're gonna be talking about all the Ephraim versions of those chapters. I will be talking about the differences in the story between Ephraim Route and Erica Route for these chapters. But those are a lot more significant, I think, than the gameplay differences. All this is to say that I'm just lazy and don't want to look up all the various like little tiny differences between Erica Route and Ephraim Route in these overlapping chapters. Anyway, all of this is to say that you will if you are doing this from Erica Route, you will not have an opportunity to restock on anything from the previous chapter. So you might be low on weapons, you might be low on healing items, but tough luck. You got to just deal with it. And you start in the top section of the map near Johanna Palace, or Johanna Hall, I guess is what it's called. And your whole crew will start out there. Meanwhile, if you are coming off of Ephraim mode, then Ephraim's group will start on the bottom left. And they'll have to meet up with Erica. Erica will always be near Johanna Hall, and Ephraim will always be on the bottom left. It'll just be about where the majority of your other units spawn. In Ephraim mode, which is what I played, Ephraim does have an opportunity to restock on some weapons, which I would highly advise because, like I said, I think this chapter is actually one. In my opinion, at least based on the number of times I've had to reset, I think this is maybe the hardest chapter so far. I think I had to reset this one like a lot compared to most of the other chapters, and I mean it's still like pretty easy, right? This is easiest Fire Emblem game. We've said this a couple times, but this chapter, is one of the few that I think like gets to the level of like FE7 harder maps and or like maybe middle of the road FE7 maps or middle of the road FE6 maps. Still not incredibly hard, but it took me a few tries for sure. Coming off of Ephraim mode, his group will start in the bottom left, as I said, and Erica will be up near Johanna Hall alongside Inez and Sala. They did not join at any point during Ephraim mode, and they will be with Erica instead to help her defend herself against the enemies that start off near that area before Ephraim and his whole group can reach there. Meanwhile, if you're coming off of Erica route, it'll be a couple turns. You have to survive for a couple turns before Ephraim shows up, and then when he does show up, he brings quote-unquote reinforcements in the form of Noel, who is terrible, but we'll get into that, and Dusel, who is who's very, very good, obviously, but he, in a desert map, he's a great knight. I'm pretty sure great knights have the lowest possible movement in deserts, second only to generals, if I'm not mistaken. Even, like, paladins have an extra movement, I think, in the sand compared to Dusel. Their terrain penalties on great knights are insane. Either way, the goal here is to rout the enemy. And the way you're going to do that is, obviously there's a bunch of enemies, there's some reinforcements that come from the bottom left, and from, like, Pegasus Knights that come down from the top. But generally speaking, you're going to make your way to the bottom right section of the map, where Valter is, and you got to kill Valter. You also have to make your way to the top left section of the map, and kill Kalik. So Kalik and Valter are here, they're leading the assault, and this is where we will ideally be finishing them off for good. Ephraim does compare this to Chapter 8, when he reunited with Erica at Renval, and the way that he means that, at first I was confused. I was like, how are these two situations similar in any way? But the answer is that you can either have Erica and Ephraim regroup immediately, and have them take on the enemies together, or you can divide and conquer, have Erica handle the top section of the map, maybe send a couple guys to help her out, and meanwhile Ephraim takes the bottom section with a couple of his guys, which is a cool idea on paper. However, I was getting my ass beat so thoroughly by this map my first couple of attempts that I did end up having to I had to have Erica and Sala and Inez just run away, basically. And then once I had a little bit more, I had found my footing a little bit, I had gotten rid of some of the reinforcements that spawn early on, like those goddamn Pegasus Knights. This is the only chapter in the entire series up to this point, maybe, where Pegasus Knights have been threatening. And it's only because Inez, Sala, and Erica are also squishy, because they have steel lances, so they're getting weighed down, they're very slow, and they're going to get doubled and like one-tapped by basically all of your guys. But because they have steel lances, their attack is actually like pretty high, and Erica is going to get like 2-shot, maybe 3-shot, and she has weapon triangle disadvantage. So if you don't get her out of there pretty quickly, and it's not, Inez can't face tank them, obviously, because he's not going to be able to retaliate. Sala can kind of do it, but his avoid isn't reliable enough, at least in my opinion, to do so, like, consistently. So I just had Erica and Sala and Inez get the hell out of there, and meet back up with Ephraim. And then from there, I split off, and had one group go north, kill Kalik. I also needed to get Kalik's Hopland Guard. Kalik will drop a Hopland Guard, which is the same thing as the Iron Rune from FE7. It prevents critical hits. So I had that sent back to Ephraim so that I could take it out with somebody else to use against Valter, because Valter was very threatening. Kalik is no slouch either, but Valter is a lot more threatening because he's just really strong, he has very high stats, and he also has a spear, which for some reason, this must have been the case in FE6 and 7 as well. I just forgot about it, I guess. For some reason, the spear has innate crit on it. So there was always like a 4 or 5% chance that I was going to get crit and one shot on a retaliation, which was very scary. But with the Hoplite Guard, I was able to remove that possibility, which was very nice. Okay, I did kind of jump around there a little bit, basically talked about like how the map plays out, the structure of it, and all that. But let's talk about some specifics here and there. So first of all, regardless of whether this is Erica route or Ephraim route, unless I guess you did some skirmishes with Ephraim before coming here, this will be the first map where we have access to Noel. So let's talk about him. Noel is one of the only Dark Mages in the entire game. The only other one is Ewan, and even then, you know, he could potentially become a mage instead. That's what I did with him this playthrough, and his best class is probably Mage Knight, so whether you're going for... If you're training Ewan, right, and you want him to be as best as he possibly can be, you're going to go Mage Knight, or if you just want to have some fun with him, like, you know, there's a couple different options, but a lot of the time, you're just not going to use Ewan one way or the other. So in practical terms, a lot of the time, Noel is just going to be your only Dark Mage. And first of all, I find that a little weird. I mean, I guess it's not that weird. This is a very small cast of characters, I get that. But I feel like the whole, you know, only one Dark Mage thing, I feel like they regressed from where they were at with that, because in FE5, there was only one Dark Mage, but that made sense. You know, it was the first time Dark Mages were ever playable in this series. But then FE6 completely rectified that, right? There were 3 of them, and they ran the whole gauntlet, or the whole spectrum of like, usability, right? You had Sophia, who was, like, really, really bad. You had Nime, who was really, really good. And then Ray, who was, like, not that great, kind of mediocre, but, like, still perfectly serviceable and usable if you wanted to use him. So they had, like, a little bit of something for everybody, right? And then 7... they go back to having only one Dark Mage for some reason, and he's in a missable Gaiden chapter. So I don't know what it is. And then this game only has one. This game is a little bit better because, you know, like I said, you can make Ewan one if you want to, and then, you know, there's a smaller cast, so a few classes ended up getting a little bit snubbed in that regard. Dark Mage is just one. There's only one Wyvern Knight, for example, unless you promote, or Wyvern Rider, I guess, unless you promote one of the Pegasi into their Wyvern split. But yeah, so that's a little bit disappointing. And then I guess the main thing that bothers me about it is that it continues, right? There are no Dark Mages in FE9 at all. And then there's only one in FE10, and he's only available on subsequent playthroughs, and very late into the game. And then FE11 and 12 are kind of weird about their Dark Mages. The next game that gives us, like, consistent access to a dark magic class with, like, dark magic properties, and specific distinction from regular anime mages is Awakening, which is kind of weird, in my opinion. But that's my dark mage rant out of the way. Let's talk about Noel. Maybe part of the reason I'm so salty about Noel is that he's terrible. He's not a very good unit. I gave him, because I plan on using him, I do want him to be my Glepnir user for this playthrough. So I gave him a body ring so that he's not weighed down by flux at base. I believe I gave him a speed wing, actually. I might have given him one. So he's like a very solid Noel, just right out of the gate, like, as far as Noel goes. But he's still really bad. He's still so slow, so frail. Base 2 defense, which is insane, and I think like 23 HP or something like that. Extremely low HP. I did end up giving him an angelic robe also, though that wasn't until a little bit later on. So what do you do with this guy, right? And then his luck, that's the other thing, right? His luck is comically bad, which is on purpose, right? Like, that's definitely, like, meant to say something about his character. Especially if we view luck as, like, you know, faith. Characters who have access to, like, healing staves and light magic tend to have very high luck, so from that perspective you can see it as, like, you know, being symbolic of their faith or their relationship with the gods. And you know, as we talked about in the SSS episode for Noel last time, he or a couple times ago, he has very little patience for faith, and you know, trusting in the unknown. So it makes sense that he has low luck, but what it means is that in practice, everybody's going to have like a little bit of crit on him, which in a circumstance like I'm in, where I'm not using save states, that could mean, you know, one bad roll and suddenly I'm redoing an entire chapter just because Noel's luck is that bad. But there are still things that you can do with him. First of all, regardless of anything else, if you promote him, then he gets access to staves, which is just always going to be a nice thing. You have plenty of staff users at this point. You're definitely not wanting for people who can use warp, unless you're maybe doing like an Iron Man, I guess, and you lost Mulder and Natasha and Archer, and probably even La Rochelle. But he can, you know, having staff utility is just always nice. He's an extra healer, so that your other healers can go, you know, focus on other things and use their, you know, utility stabs like Restore or Barrier or Warp or whatever it is, while you can have someone else on healing duty. That's good. That's just always good. He also has access to, if you promote him into Druid, he gains access to Anima. Druids get Anima magic in this game, which is not a very useful thing, but what it does is allow him to use lighter tomes to not get weighed down as badly and have like higher crit chances and stuff like that. Because as it stands, just based on dark magic, he has Flux, and then basically that's it. You know, every other dark mage spell in this game is kind of bad. But at the end of the day, you guys all, if you've played this game, you know what Noel's about, right? You start chapter 15, and there is a house immediately to your north. Noel, if you position him right, can visit it turn 1. It gives you a Master Seal, which is a universal promotion item that can be used to promote any character. And Noel is at a level where he can promote immediately. So it's like tailor-made for you to get it and use it on him immediately. I mean, obviously you can use it on anybody, but I think just positioning-wise, I think it makes a lot of sense for you to give it to Noel. Maybe because he's forced in the Erica route version. That might be what it is. Maybe they wanted you to have a little bit more leeway to use Noel because he was forced in this map. Regardless, you can promote him. And as I said, you can promote him into Druid, but you can also promote him into Summoner. And Summoner is really, really, really cool. Everybody likes Summoner. Everybody thinks Summoner is the coolest shit ever. And if for some reason you don't know about Summoner, let me explain it to you. So Summoner is a unique class that is, I believe, as I mentioned earlier in the question segment, I believe completely exclusive to this game as a playable class. If I'm wrong about that, forgive me, but I don't remember it being anywhere else in the entire series. And what you can do, I mean, it has access to only dark magic and staves. So it loses out on anima magic from going Druid, but what you gain in exchange is the ability to summon a phantom. And the phantoms are awesome. They are 5-move units that you can control. You have complete control over them. They can fly over terrain. So no like terrain penalties that you gotta watch out for, or you know, if you need them to get somewhere fast, like faster than your other units can, by going around like a cliff or a lake or whatever it may be, they can do that. And they are essentially expendable units. You know, they only have 1 HP, so it is entirely expected that they will die. And when they do, you can move on with your life. And they can be used as fantastic bait for characters who, you know, if you put a character in a shaky situation, you know, and if they're going to be attacked by like 3 guys, they die. You can use a phantom to bait one of them away, and they'll attack the phantom instead and make sure that your other guy survives. Or if you, you know, you are in range of a guy with a killer weapon, and you don't want to risk getting crit, you can use a phantom to bait them away. Or if you want to make sure that you can attack a guy on player phase instead of you know, giving him the chance to attack you first on enemy phase, you can have the phantom bait him over so that you can attack him next turn, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of really useful applications for these things. I don't think that they're like broken. I don't think that they're like, you know, they make Noel a top tier unit in the game or anything like that, but they are very, very handy things to have on deck. You can only summon one at a time, which is unfortunate. I mean, otherwise that would maybe be a little bit broken. But limiting it to one at a time, I think makes sense. So yeah, I mean, playing through FE8, and this is actually, so I was considering making Noel a druid, which sounds silly, but because druid's like way worse in every way. But I decided against it. The reason I was thinking about it in the first place is because anytime I use Noel, or anytime I use Ewan as a dark mage, I always make them into summoner. I've never done druid at all, ever, in this game anyway. And I was thinking, maybe I'll mix it up. Maybe I'll try something different. Maybe I'll see how Anima, on Druid works out. Maybe it's better than I'm giving it credit for, or whatever. But I decided against it, and the reason that I didn't go for it is because in a playthrough of the game where I am attempting to showcase, I guess, everything that makes FE8 FE8, it feels very wrong to not utilize Summoner, which I think is one of the most quintessentially FE8 things, right? It's like one of those things that makes FE8 stand out among other Fire Emblem games, along with like its major route split, and the different grinding areas, in terms of gameplay, it doesn't have like a ton that makes it feel unique. But Summoner is absolutely one of them, and I would not be doing this game justice if I did not use the Summoner and then talk about it. I think that's I think it's just such a core part of the FE8 experience. Maybe next time I play FE8, I'll use like Druid Ewan or something like that. But so far, I can sincerely say that I do not regret it, because those Phantoms have come in handy a lot already. I really like using Summoner in this game, and I know everybody does. It's a very cold take that Summoner is a cool class, but man, it's common knowledge for a reason. Everybody loves it, and it's for good reason, in my opinion. It's a very fun class to use, and despite Noel's very mediocre stats, even with stat boosters given to him left and right, I'm still having a ton of fun using him, and I think he's still worth using. Just for that Phantom utility alone, I think it's very handy. One thing you do got to watch out for with the Phantoms, though, is that if they kill an enemy with a droppable item, and they get a hold of that item, you can never get that back. It'll stay in their inventory, because you cannot trade their items off of them. Obviously, they spawn with axes, sometimes quite good axes. I think they can spawn with like killer axes and silver axes, depending on who summons them, and at like what level. Something like that. There's like a whole like calculation that goes into it. And, they didn't want you to be able to get infinite weapons for no money, or no resources at all. So they just made it so that you can't trade them at all. You can't get items off of them in any capacity, but that also means that if if an enemy drops like a promotion item or a stat booster, tough luck, fuck you. Okay. So there's a couple more unique things that I want to call out about this chapter. First of all, there's a lot of cool talk conversations here that I got. I don't know about the Erica side of things, but on Ephraim Route, there are several conversations between various characters. Ewan and Sala have one, which I really like, especially considering this is something I complained about back in FE7, where there's a chapter in FE7 where you're in a desert and Pent is there as a green unit, and for some reason, Urk does not have any kind of conversation with him whatsoever. I don't know what the deal with that is, but he just doesn't happen. So I was happy to see that they had a similar situation here, where Ewan can link up with Sala, and they do have a conversation. And it's nothing complex, it's nothing crazy, but it is nice. Erica obviously has a conversation with Ephraim. Tana has a conversation with Ines and also Erica. And if there's more than that, I didn't see them, but it's possible that, I don't know, maybe like Garrick has a conversation with Sala. That seems plausible. Maybe there's a couple others. I'm not entirely sure. But it was a nice touch to see, when I feel like that's something that the previous game definitely skimped out on a little bit. And then, of course, one of the most famous things about this chapter is its boss conversations. There's two in particular that come to mind. And it is the boss conversation between Calic and Joshua, and the boss conversation between Volter and Cormag. And now, both of these conversations are very good regardless of the route that you pick. However, they are different, pretty significantly different, between Erica route and Ephraim route. And the ones on Erica route, most people, I would argue, consider them to be better on Erica route. I would agree that they're better on Erica, especially Joshua's and Calyx. The Cormac Vaulter one is pretty good, I think, regardless of the route you take. But essentially, the reason that it's so different, right, is because in Erica route, we see Glenn die, and we see that Vaulter killed him, and we see Cormac sort of piece that together. And then meanwhile, we see that Joshua is the Prince of Johanna, and that Kala killed his mom. And so they have a lot more to talk about in that sense. And it's a little bit disappointing. I know, obviously they couldn't have it be exactly the same because those events do not play out in Ephraim route at all. But it would have been really easy for Vaulter to just say, oh, by the way, I killed your brother. And for that, to have Cormac get a reaction out of that. And then, Joshua could, like he and Kala could be like, oh, maybe Kala could be like, when I killed Queen Ismaire, she shouted Joshua, at the last second or something like that. Is that you? Or are you the Prince of Johanna? And, Joshua could get really mad at him for killing his mom. I just feel like, because Joshua and Cormac have absolutely no opinion on the deaths of their family members. There's no scene where they reconcile it with it at all, because as far as, they mention that Ismaire died, but it never comes up. Joshua is not involved in any of those conversations, which is really weird and really disappointing. And then Glenn, okay, so I have a funny story about this, actually. So when I played through this game for the first time, I did Ephraim route, and I got to this chapter, and there's a house here, one of the optional houses that only have dialogue. Some of the dialogue was just this guy going through the different grotto generals and talking about what happened to them, and he talks about both Selena and Glenn. If you remember, or if you've picked up on this from either playing the game yourself, obviously you would know, or if you've just been paying very close attention to the story summaries that I've been giving, you would know that on Erica route, Glenn is never resolved in any way. He just kind of shows up in a cutscene at the beginning of the route split and then never appears again. And then the same is true on Erica route for Selena. That's just never resolved in any way on Erica route. So this house just kind of casually drops that they both died. Which, having played Ephraim route, I knew that Selena died, but Glenn dying was completely new information to me. So I was like, why is this just sequestered away in some random house that you're probably not even going to visit? I don't even know why I visited it my first playthrough. But I did. So, anyway, I just think that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. I guess it encourages replay, but, I think that they should have had at least a little something about these events in their own, regardless of what route you take. Okay, I think that's just about everything. Of course, one thing I haven't mentioned is that this is a desert chapter. There is actually a little bit of a tutorial about how the desert mechanic works, saying that, our mounted units are being really slowed down by the desert, and, everybody's a little bit slowed down by the desert, but flyers and mages are completely unaffected, or something like that. So it's a nice little refresher if you don't remember how the desert works, or if it's your first playthrough of a Fire Emblem game. You haven't done a desert playthrough before, or haven't done a desert chapter before in any of these games. This is a good catch you up to speed sort of thing. Because desert maps are really annoying. I do think that this map is good. I was getting a little bit frustrated with it, and I hate desert maps. They're not fun the majority of the time. I can't think of a single one that we've talked about in this series so far that I like. This one is, I think, better than most, just because the majority of it is not really desert. There's desert in the middle, but then there's also long stretches at the bottom and the top where your movement is a lot more free, so you don't have to worry too much about being slowed down. But for those times where you do have to cross the desert, it's just so annoying, and it makes it hard to get away with Erica and Inez and Sala at the beginning. When you're and hard to maneuver around the various Pegasus Knights coming at you. There's a lot of wyverns in this chapter also, so there's plenty of plenty of really annoying things about this desert chapter. I don't dislike it. I know a lot of people think it's actually like one of the better chapters in the game, which I can understand. I was getting skill issued. I think this game is very easy, so I think I was just kind of like coasting for a little bit, and then this chapter shows up and actually makes you have to try a little bit. I was getting my dick kicked in by it a little bit. So that might have been contributing to the frustration, but overall I think it's a fine map. I don't love it, but I don't have anything against it either. I think it's just okay. And then obviously another staple of desert maps in this series are hidden items that you can get by positioning theoretically anybody, but if you do a thief, then it is guaranteed. Now assassins do not count. If you promote Colm into an assassin, then he will lose this ability, and it'll just be, I think, based on luck like everybody else. However, you will always have I guess you can either accidentally or on purpose miss recruiting Renak, so you might not have Renak. But if you do, he will be guaranteed to have this, as well as if you promoted Colm into a rogue, it'll be the same thing. And there's some really good items in this desert chapter. Let me just run through a list of them. Okay, yeah, so there's an Eclipse Tome, which is really bad. It's also very out of the way. There is a Metis's Tome, which I believe is the same thing as Aphis' Drops. Let me just double check that. But I believe it increases your growth rates. The unit that Metis's Tome is used on will have all of their growth rates permanently increased by 5% each. I used that on La Rochelle, because I like La Rochelle and I enjoy using her, so I gave her that little boost there. It's only 5% isn't like a ton or anything, so just give it to whatever unit you like using the most. There is a Killer Bow. I'm trying to go from like roughly least to most useful. There is a Worm Slayer. There is a Silent Staff. But then the four big ones, in my opinion, are a Body Ring, the Swift Soul, also known as the Boots, the Silver Card, and of course the Warp Staff. Now, I did get most of these. I got all the ones that I would consider to be really good, except I did forget about the Warp Staff. I completely I was on my way over to I only had Vulture left. I was moving Renak to go get the Warp Staff, and I was right there. But then right as the chapter was ending, I killed Vulture just before I got the Warp Staff, just without thinking about it. So I completely missed Warp. That's very unfortunate, because there are some chapters, especially Chapter 18, where I think Warp is going to be really useful. There's also Chapter 20, which I wouldn't be able to Warp skip completely, but I think there are some moments in Chapter 20 where Warp would come in handy. I don't think I would use it in Chapter 19. I know a lot of people like to use it in Chapter 19 to warp skip and kill the boss, but I think that would probably constitute as warp skipping for my purposes. So I wouldn't have used it there, but Chapter 18 and Chapter 20 definitely would have benefited from it. Also, Chapter 21, I think you could argue. So I'm gonna have to make do, but I'll be fine. I've gone through this game plenty of times without using warp, so I think I'll be good. But I did get the Silver Card. I got the Swift Soul. I got the Body Ring, Killer Bow, and the Metis's Tome. I think I also missed the Silent Staff. And then I purposefully did not grab the Eclipse Tome. I don't even remember about the Worm Slayer. But yeah, so overall, a lot of interesting stuff going on in this chapter. Mechanically and narratively, I think there's a lot of very interesting aspects to this chapter. Makes it feel very unique, very dynamic, and adds a lot of incentive to replay the game. To see what the different versions of this map look like. But overall, in terms of actually sitting down and playing it, I think it's definitely not bad, but I don't care for it all that much. I think it's just kind of is what it, decent. Certainly one of the better desert maps in the series, that's for sure. But that's a very low bar, so don't know how much that means. Okay, so in the story, after this chapter concludes, Erica and Ephraim meet back up and they sort of exchange information. What's interesting, the only really interesting thing about this cutscene that I want to draw attention to is that Ephraim tells Erica, hey, I met Leon and this is what happened, and it recounts the conversation from the end of his chapter 14. But then Erica says, wait, I also met Leon, and she conveys the information from her chapter 14 conversation with Leon. which, I mean, we know that Leon can teleport around, so that part's not that weird. But what it does mean is that, if these scenes are both happening and both play out in exactly the same way, it does call into question, like, which of them is, like, more, like, in the Erica canon version of events, was Leon just being completely honest in the scene with Ephraim, and he is actually the Demon King? If so, then why would he try to fool Ephraim but not Erica? And then if Ephraim's route is canon, then why would he, like, try to trick Erica into thinking that he's... Why would he... Okay, so if Ephraim's route is canon, if we're looking at the playthrough that you did, and you did Ephraim route, you got the chapter 14 scene, and it's actually Leon, pretending to be, like, super fucked up and evil, then why would that Leon go and try to manipulate Erica, instead of just also lying to her? I don't really get it. There's going to be a couple points like this, in this episode, where I think that they like, this is such a cool idea of, like, Leon surviving and being still in control of himself in one route but not in the other. That's a really neat idea, but I feel like they didn't necessarily think the implications of that all the way through. There's a couple of examples. Again, I'll mention more of them as we go on, but this is the first one that comes to mind of, like, I don't think that this really meshes with either, like, both of these conversations happening, assuming that they play out exactly the same, which maybe they don't. But they sound pretty similar. Like, they both recount, Erica's recounting of what happened to Ephraim on Ephraim route sounds very similar to what we saw on Erica route. So I think it's safe to assume that they're basically exactly the same. And that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, but maybe I just don't get it. Maybe someone else can explain why I'm being dumb and why it actually makes perfect sense. I don't know. You also get the Sacred Twins for whichever country you did not visit last chapter. So in Chapter 4 Erica, we got Johanna's Sacred Twins. In Chapter 4 Ephraim, we got Grotto's. Now, whichever one you didn't get before, you get now. As a reminder, I guess, because we did just talk about the Grotto ones last chapter, but as a reminder, because it's been a bit since we talked about Johanna's. Johanna's are the sword at Hulma and the animatome Excalibur. So now that Erica and Ephraim are reunited, it's time to decide what to do next. And they're still not exactly sure what's going on with Leon, but they know that if he's fucking around with the Darkstone, if the Darkstone has the power, of the Demon King, then it's probably best to start gathering the remaining Sacred Stones, because they've been, Inez seemed skeptical that the Sacred Stones are, like, really actual magical artifacts of great power. He seems more like, he thinks there's just kind of, like, superstition. But someone, I don't remember who it is, maybe Erica or somebody, brings up the very good point, which is that clearly Grotto and Leon is invested in destroying them. So, like, what would be the point of doing that if they weren't actually important? And so they decide that they're going to go get the other two Sacred Stones, starting with the Rene Sacred Stone, which is still intact as far as they're aware, because in order to get access to it, Leon would have needed to get their bracelets, and he did never manage to get either of their bracelets. So they will go to Rene and get the Sacred Stone from there. And that's how the chapter ends, leading into chapter 16, which is called Ruled by Madness. I was thinking about doing the Tower of Valni here, because it is at this point, after chapter 15, where the entire tower becomes unlocked. Previously, you can only access, like, the first floor, and then a chapter or two later, you can access the second floor, etc., etc. I think it's like one floor per chapter up until this point. So we now have access to the whole tower. However, there was a reason that I decided to hold off, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So instead, we're just going to go straight into chapter 16, which is called, as I said, Ruled by Madness. So they're headed back to Rene, and the one in charge of Rene currently is the traitor Orson, who, if you recall, betrayed Erica and Ephraim in chapter 8, and had just gone full mask off, wanting to betray them and work for Grotto. I think he at the time explained that he was doing this because he wanted to be reunited with his dear Monica or something like that. So now we have to go and deal with him. And we do get a scene of him talking to Monica. We don't actually see Monica. I don't remember if she says anything in this scene. She might just say darling. She might say it like once. Because obviously, the whole... We'll talk more about this later, but the whole thing with Monica, that she only says darling. I'm pretty sure she only says it once here, if at all. And then we don't see her at all, which is, a little bit foreboding. And honestly, it seems... I guess they probably do have her say darling. I don't remember if they do, but they probably do, just because otherwise it kind of looks like Orson's just, like, talking to himself. Like he's gone completely insane, which, I mean, he has still, as we'll discover, but he's not, like, hallucinating someone being there that isn't. Orson is paid a visit by Reeve and Leon. Reeve sort of takes up the charge on this conversation in Erica route, whereas Leon does in Ephraim route, indicating Leon is in a little bit more of a lucid state in this version of events in Ephraim route. But either way, it's the same general idea, which is that Ephraim is on his way. Go kill him, because he's gonna try to kill you and take away Monica. And he's like, no, absolutely not gonna let that happen. So he goes to fight. Ephraim. Just before the chapter starts, Ephraim and Erica are approached by Myrrh. She's the Manakete who we've seen pop up, a lot during the story, especially in Ephraim route, because she goes with Ephraim. She's not around at all in Erica route, actually. She comes up and says, hey, now that I have my Dragonstone back, and now that it's been a little bit since I got my Dragonstone back, I'm feeling more in fit fighting shape. So I would like to join you guys on the field of battle. And Erica and Ephraim agree on the condition that she makes sure to stay close to them. And so we now finally have Myrrh as a playable character. She's not actually forced in this chapter. We do get the option to deploy or not deploy her, depending on what we want to do. But let's talk a little bit about her. Myrrh is the second to last character to join in this game, outside of the creature campaign, I guess, obviously. But she is a Manakete and works very similarly to characters like Faye. I mean, at this point, I think it's literally just been Faye that we've seen, because there are Manaketes in FE 1 and 3, but obviously we didn't talk about any of those. So the only frame of reference we have for this type of character right now is Faye from FE 6. She is a very weak unit, like her base stats are extremely low. However, she does have her Dragonstone, which increases her stats by a lot when she transforms. And she's not turned into a little adorable fluffy white chicken dragon like Faye did in FE6. Instead, she turns into like a big, like, actual fucking eat you alive dragon. And she looks sick. She looks really cool. I really like the design for her dragon form. And she has really low stats, but very, very high growth rates, and levels up extremely quickly. So she gets good very quickly. Her Dragonstone does super effective damage on monsters. So it's very nice to have someone who can deal with them very efficiently. And the Dragonstone has a lot of might attached to it. So like even high level boss monsters, she's going to be dealing with in one hit. Maybe like, after a little bit of chip, she can kill them in one hit. The only downside to using Myrrh is, in fact, the same downside to using Faye in FE6, which is that her Dragonstone only has a limited number of uses and cannot be targeted by the hammer and staff. So once she uses up all of her Dragonstone uses, she's gone. She's done. She can't do anything more. She can never attack again. Unlike Faye only had 30 uses of her Dragonstone, whereas Myrrh has 50. So there's a lot more leeway in terms of usability there. But it's still, you can't just like go around killing every schmuck that you see. Otherwise, Myrrh is going to run out of Dragonstone uses very, very, very quickly before you even approach the end game. So if you want to use her, you got to make sure that you're choosing who you decide to allocate those kills to, or how you decide to allocate those kills to her very thoughtfully, because otherwise you're gonna burn through uses too quickly. We'll talk a little bit about Myrrh and how I decided to use her for this playthrough in a little bit. But for now, suffice it to say, I didn't bring her to this chapter. I do like using Myrrh, and I think she's pretty good. I don't think she's like, busted insane or anything like that. Because especially if you don't train her at all, you're going to try to bring her to the later maps. And she has very low, her Dragonstone gives her a lot of buffs in, like, defense and strength and all that, but she has very low HP. So even with the big defense buffs, it's only going to take a few good hits for her to die, from at base level anyway. So I don't think she breaks the game over her knee or anything like that. I think she can be very effective in some of the late game, maps as like a very effective delete button on certain very bulky monsters, maybe against some boss monsters and stuff like that. But for the most part, you're gonna have to be sparing in your use of her, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think it does hold her back. Okay, so the goal of this chapter is to kill Orson and seize the throne. And it's pretty straightforward. There are two ways you can go, and there's some treasure that you can get in the treasure room. On the top right is another one, like a little bit further down. There are some thieves that will, or to the left rather. There's one sort of in a left hallway. There are thieves that will spawn and try to take that treasure for themselves. There are also reinforcements that come from behind you. So there are a couple of good anti-turtling incentives in this map, in my opinion. And I think that's pretty good. I actually like this map quite a bit. It is also pretty difficult, in my opinion. I don't think it's like the hardest map in the world. I don't think it's even harder than Chapter 15. In fact, I beat this map first try. I did have to get lucky on a couple of things, but I did beat it first try compared to Chapter 15, which took me I want to say 6. So, from that perspective, I definitely don't think it's as bad. But there's a lot of really tough enemies in this map. We're starting to see and this is true last map as well. But we're starting to see promoted enemies at this point very consistently. There's a lot of promoted magic users, especially as you get closer to the throne room. There's some siege tomes that can do a lot of damage to you. They two-shot a lot of my units. So if you take too much chip from some of the physical units, then that can be a real problem. This is another instance. This is kind of like what I was talking about too with the summons, right? Because this is an instance where immediately the summons are very useful. Even compared to some later chapters, I don't think summons are extremely useful in every single chapter of the game. But especially, I think they're really good for baiting out siege tomes. I think they're very good for baiting out if you don't want to take too many hits on one enemy phase. They can be really, really handy for that. So I really like the Phantoms in this map, and it's cool to see them be you promote Noel, or you get Noel in Chapter 14, you promote him immediately probably, and then almost immediately he starts really putting in the work with those Phantoms. I did have a couple of very lucky breaks here that would have required me to reset if I hadn't really lucked out. The first one was that I was targeted by a siege tome. I think it had around a 50% chance to hit, and I did dodge. I would have had to reset if it landed. I think it would have killed Ford because it did over half of his health for some fucking reason. The siege tomes in this game can be very, very, very powerful, especially when Eclipse is just nothing. Eclipse is terrible, but both bolting and purge can be extremely deadly if you're not careful. The other one, and this is really, really funny because I did not deserve to walk away from this one alive, but I did. What happened was I was fighting Orson, and Orson has a rune sword to start off with, and a rune sword is not a very good weapon. I really like it. I think I've mentioned before, actually, that the rune sword is my favorite GBA-era weapon, just aesthetically and conceptually. I think it's fucking awesome. It's like Nosferatu, but in a sword. I really like that. But in terms of its actual stats, it's not very good. He was doing no damage to me. And I had a Phantom nearby just to bait his attacks away from the guys that were fighting him. And he killed the Phantom. However, when he did this, he switched from his rune sword to his silver lance. And I didn't realize that. So what happened was I went to attack him with Ephraim, didn't bother to check the battle forecast, because I thought he was still using the rune sword. The rune sword was doing no damage to Ephraim, so I was like, yeah, this is fine. So I attacked him, and I immediately saw my mistake, because if he had retaliated on me, he would have killed me. He had like a 55% chance to hit, I think, so like not impossible that he would have just missed, but that also would have been pretty lucky. But no, Ephraim decided to flex a little bit and just landed a crit, so he didn't even have to worry about that retaliation strike from Orson. Let me reiterate, 100% would have killed him. I am a fraud, I am bad at Fire Emblem, and I do not deserve to be doing this podcast about Fire Emblem, but here I am. Anyway, pretty simple chapter, all things considered. I thought I would have more to say about it, because I actually really like this chapter. I think that the approach to the throne room is really fun. Having to deal with those siege tomes can be annoying, but it's also fun to, like, think about how you can break, like, how you have your higher move units break away to deal with those siege tome users safely, while not taking too much damage from enemies themselves when they split off from the main group. So, overall, I think it's a pretty fun map, but it's not really like, I don't know, we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's just like a good castle siege map, right? We've seen plenty of those, right? We have like chapter 16 from FE6. There's chapter 17 from FE7. There's some really good castle siege or castle infiltration chapters in this series. Chapter 18 from Thracia is another great example. Really, really fun map. I think I just really like castle infiltration maps. But as far as the gameplay mechanics of it go and like features that the map has, this is probably one of the more simple ones so far, which is not a bad thing by any means. It's just not really a lot in the way of side objectives, but the actual progression of the map itself is just fun. So you can't beat that. Okay, so then the chapter's over. We kill Orson, and Ephraim, Erica, and Seth all head into the back room where Orson was all holed up. They mentioned earlier in the chapter that he was not taking any meals. Soldiers were spreading rumors about how creepy he was. So generally people did not vibe with him very much. And we see sort of what he was getting up to all that time. He was locked away in this room with Monica, quote unquote. And we don't actually see Monica. Presumably they just didn't want to do a unique portrait for her. But I do also like the implications of what it means that she doesn't have a portrait. Because they look at her and they're like, this is awful. So Monica was just a reanimated corpse the entire time. And Ephraim says, oh, this is the same thing that they did on Vigard. But we saw what Vigard looked like. He looked kind of pale, and a little sallow, I guess, but not like a living corpse. He was able to fool people into thinking that he was still alive. So I'm not sure. I mean, Ephraim and Erica, or Ephraim, well, yeah, all three of them, Ephraim, Erica, and Seth all notice immediately and realize what she is. So I have to imagine that she's actively decomposing, which is a very grotesque image. And I get why they wouldn't, even putting aside that, maybe they just didn't want to do a unique portrait for her. Maybe that's not what it was. Maybe they just didn't want to show, how gruesome it was. Just have a half-rotted corpse, walk into the room or whatever. And she can also only say darling. She just says darling over and over and over and over again. Orson was successfully deluding himself into thinking that he had actually been reunited with his dead wife. But, it was just a puppet, an illusion the whole time. And they reflect a little bit on Orson. I think Orson's a pretty interesting character. I don't, it doesn't bother me really that they don't do that much with him, because I think that what is here works pretty well. He's not a particularly deep or interesting character, but I do think that it's a very universally sympathetic motivation, right? I think most people have somebody in their life who, they don't want to die, and if they did die or will die or have died, then they would love them to come back. But I like this the tone of this sequence is just so cool. And it's so very much unlike a lot of other Fire Emblem games. I can't think of a scene like this in any of the other GBA games, that's for sure. Maybe Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil has a pretty morbid tone a lot of the time, but yeah, I don't know. I liked it quite a bit. I thought this was a good way to wrap up this chapter. What I didn't care for as much was what happens after. So Ephraim's like, you know, we can start, rounding up the bandits and putting things back in order in Rene, but we'll never fully heal the people from what they went through while we were gone. And it's something that's going to have to take a really, really long time to earn back that trust. But then immediately they hear cheering coming from outside, and they go out and they see that everybody's super excited to see them. And now Seth does explicitly say, like, they're not cheering for you. They're cheering that Orson is gone and that they might have some order back in Rene, which makes sense. It would have made it's a lot more believable to me that that's the case than them all just like being super excited that Ephraim and Erica are here. But I kind of question why this scene was necessary. I don't feel like it feels like they're trying to emulate fucking Marth, right? Like, it feels very, very much like the scene in FE1 and FE3, I guess, where Marth comes back. And it just doesn't hit the same. It's not the same context. It doesn't feel like this has been built up to the entire game in the same way that it was in FE1 and FE3. So I feel like it doesn't land the way that they wanted it to. It feels like they're going for a very similar like vibe and aesthetic to the whole scene, without really like putting in the work to make that feel like a satisfying outcome. And they even, like, the writers know that they didn't put in the work to make that a satisfying outcome, because Seth literally looks at the camera and says, "This isn't because of Erica and Ephraim. These are just like, these guys are just cheering because they're happy to not be dying anymore." I don't know. It felt weird. I just don't really know why they bothered to include the scene at all. I don't think it really does much. In fact, I think if anything, it kind of undermines the sort of atmosphere that Ephraim was setting up by, hammering home that, the people will never fully be the same again, and the pain that they've been through is like too much to expect them to recover from overnight. Obviously that's not what the scene is trying to say. Like, it doesn't imply that they're over it and that they really love Ephraim and Erica and they're, like, doing better than ever or whatever. But it feels like it just throws off the vibe. I don't know. So Erica and Ephraim do go and get their hands on the sacred stone. They hold up their bracelets, and they're able to get into the inner sanctum of Rene Castle, where the stone is being kept. And it's still safe. It's still intact. Grotto was not able to get access to it. And so from here, they decide that they're going to go to Rouston in order to get the other remaining sacred stone. So that's where they're headed next. It's at this point that Erica and Ephraim get access to their promotions. They do have a story-based promotion, like many lords in the series up to this point. However, similarly, actually, to Lynn, Ellawood, and Hector, it is not... You don't have to do it right here, right now. I guess you did with the main lord of FE7, whichever your main lord was, you just always promoted at the same time, I think. But the other two lords, you got the item at a certain point in the story, and then you could just use it whenever you wanted. It's similar to that here, where now is the first opportunity they have to promote, and the game prompts you, like, hey, do you want Erica and Ephraim to promote? And you can say yes, and they do it right away. Or you could say no, and then the bracelets just get put in their inventory as a promotion item, if that's what you want to do. I recommend just promoting them right away, especially the one that you didn't go with for the route split is going to be auto-leveled to 15 at this point, so there's really no reason to hold out for any just 5 extra levels, it doesn't really matter. The one, if for whatever reason you haven't trained the one that you've had with you the entire game up to this point, I don't know what to tell you. Probably just still promote them anyway, because if you're not going to use them, then you might as well just have them be better dead weight, slightly less dead weight. So yeah, I don't see any reason, unless you really want to get up to level 20 with either of them. You might as well just promote immediately. They also get their sacred twins. So these sacred twins are similar to the other ones. They're legendary weapons. However, these are exclusive to Erica and Ephraim. All the other ones can be used by anybody who has the rank to use them. However, these two are only for Erica and Ephraim. There is Sigmund, the Thunder Sword, which is Erica's personal weapon, and Sigmund, the Flame Lance, I believe, is what Ephraim's is called. And they're exclusive to those two. We already have seen a sword, and there will be a lance a little bit later on, but those can be used by anybody. So you don't have to worry about finding a legendary weapon for Erica and Ephraim to use, because they just get these. Incidentally, just as a side note about their promotion, they still remain locked to their single weapon type. Unfortunately, Erica does not gain access to lances on promotion. That would have been really cool if she was able to use javelins now like Ella would, but unfortunately that is not the case. She's still locked to swords. However, Sigmund is really good. It boosts her strength by 5, which is like while she's using it in the same way that Garm boosts speed, which is really, really nice. And that's like something that she needs a lot. I don't remember what Sigmund boosts. I probably should just check and see what all of them boost. I know Garm boosts speed. I know Sigmund boosts strength. I don't remember what the other ones boost. In fact, let me just go do that right now, because I'm curious about it myself too now, actually. Oh, and you do not need to promote Erica and Ephraim to use their weapons. So even if you leave them unpromoted, Erica can still use Sigmund, and Ephraim can still use Sigmund. So Sigmund is +5 strength. Latona doesn't give a stat boost at all. Vidofnir, which is the spear, or the lance, is +5 defense. Adhulma is +5 resistance. Sigmund is also +5 strength, so same as Sigmund. Garm is +5 speed. Nidhogg is +5 luck. And then I don't know where the others are. Excalibur, rather. Where is it? Excalibur. Glepnir is +5 skill. Excalibur is +5 speed. And then, what's the last one? I think it's Ivaldi. +5 defense for Ivaldi. So, decent set of stat boosts. I mean, Nidhogg boosting luck is like a meme. And then, Glepnir is already the worst of the legendary weapons. So probably would have benefited from giving +5 like magic or +5 speed or something instead of +5 skill. But I mean, I guess it does help with like accuracy issues if your dark mage isn't very accurate. I mean, Noel has very bad luck, and luck not as much as skill, but luck does play into hit. So it might be good to have a little bit of extra hit chance on that, I guess. Okay, and that is it for Chapter 16. Now, this is where we would normally move on to Chapter 17. However, I did take a detour here to do the entire Tower of Valni. If you recall, the Tower of Valni is an area that we got access to in Chapter 9, whether Erica or Ephraim route. As soon as Chapter 9 started, you picked your route, and you gained access to the Tower of Valni, which you could go. This is a repeatable area that you could go to anytime you wanted to fight monsters. It was a good spot for level grinding. Most people, at least, as far as I'm aware, this is certainly true of me, if you're just grinding, there's no reason to go further than the first, maybe the second floor, and then just immediately leave the tower. But there are 8 whole floors to this, and each of them has a unique map with a unique thing going on, unique enemies. Well, not unique enemies, there's still monsters and all that stuff. But there's like different items you can get on these maps and all that. So I decided that I was going to do all of them, and my god, it sucked. The Tower of Valni is terrible. I did not like playing it at all. And I can tell you exactly why. So there are 8 maps, as I mentioned, and all of them are route maps. Every single one of them is a route map. And none of them are like super hard, but a lot of them have a lot of enemies. And sometimes those enemies can be pretty tough, right? They have enemies with like killer weapons and effective weapons on the higher floors. There's a lot of promoted enemies. So there's a lot of guys that can throw you off. And what's worse is that you cannot save between floors of the tower. So if you're playing without save states, then you are expected to do all 8 floors in one go. with no deaths, no resets, because if you have to reset, then you start the entire tower over from the beginning and lose all of your weapons and all of the experience that you gained, any items that you may have gained over the course of that attempt are just gone. Now, you can retreat from the tower at any time, which is good because it means that you can, if you think you're gonna die, if you're in a position where you feel like you're about to lose, you still have to start over from the beginning, but at the very least you're able to keep your experience and items, which is nice. But it's still really obnoxious that you have to start the whole thing from the beginning. I don't get why you can't just save in between floors. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I guess it's supposed to be like a gauntlet, and it's supposed to be like a tricky optional challenge. Because there are some decent items that you can get here. Some of the enemies will drop like good weapons. I think I got a couple of killer weapons. I know even on the first floor, I think I mentioned this earlier, on the first floor, I got a rune sword at one point, which is not a very good weapon, but it is a really cool one, and a very rare one, very unique one, if nothing else. So, I was happy to get that. And there's decent weapons as you go further up the tower. It's all completely random. I think even the contents of the chests are completely random. But even if they aren't, there's nothing like amazing. There's like a decent amount of gold, and like some decent weapons. I think the one at the top of the tower has a, what is it called? A blue gem. That's what I got this time. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over every single map, mostly because most of them are very boring, and I don't have a lot of opinions on them. When we rank the, I guess, I've been ranking all of the maps in all of the games just on my own time, making like tier lists for all the maps, and I'll share those at some point. But when I put this on the tier list, I'm probably not going to rank any of the individual maps. I'll probably just do the entire Tower of Valni in one spot, because it feels very all the maps are pretty quick, relatively speaking. They don't feel like huge, long affairs, especially not the early ones. But the fact that they're all route is so annoying. Some of them could have been kill boss. Some of them could have been C's. I think that would have made more sense, maybe not narratively, but from a game design perspective, it really sucks that all of them are route maps. The only two that I wanted to draw particular attention to, I guess is it's two. There's one that is very similar in its execution to the Yan chapter of FE6, where you have to kill all the enemies in one room, and then there's no throne to seize, but once you kill all the enemies, then a pathway opens up to the next room, and then the one after that, and the one after that. So that one took fucking forever. And then there's also there's enemies that spawn in from behind you, which is cool when they're threatening Manicheets, and you're racing to the end and it's a seize map. Instead, what this means in practice is that they're shitty gargoyles that you have to leave somebody behind to kill, because the more that spawn, the longer it's going to take to finish this goddamn route map, and it's not fun. But that is not the only one of these maps that borrows inspiration from an FE6 map. The final map of the Tower of Valni is almost a carbon copy of Chapter 16X from Binding Blade, which is the what is it called? The Gaiden chapter where you got the legendary Light Tome in that game. And everybody hates that chapter. It's really annoying. It takes forever to get to the top. It's very tedious. And this chapter also borrows the shitty gimmick of the beams of light shooting down at you, which I guess is supposed to just be the tower's magical defenses. I would have loved to see the fucking Grotto soldiers have to deal with this shit to get up there, to get the Sacred Stone. It would have been really funny if Kalik and Selena died to these goddamn light arrows. But no, unfortunately, it's only us that has to deal with them, apparently. The entire map is very similar in layout to 16X. It's not identical, it's slightly different. I don't think it's as big, for sure, or probably. Which is very nice, because that chapter was very big and very long, and I don't like it. But this one wasn't much better. So, the only other thing worth really mentioning about this is that the boss at the top of the tower, I believe, is always a Cyclops. I think the bosses are the same every single time. It might be a different type of monster every single time, but if not, then most of the monster types are represented here in one form or another. But the Cyclops is the final boss, and they have a higher than average chance to be holding a stat booster or promotion item, I believe. And when I say holding, I mean it does drop when you kill them, so you don't have to like steal it off of them or anything. But yeah, I didn't have a lot of fun with this, and when I eventually do the Lagdao Ruins, I am planning on probably handling it a little bit differently. The way I'll probably end up doing it is that I will hold off on doing it until after I beat the game, and then probably just do it then. I'll probably still talk about it before endgame, because I don't want to wrap up the story and do all the climactic story stuff and then say, hey, now we'll do the Lagdao Ruins. That seems lame and anticlimactic. So I myself will probably play it after the game is over, but I'll probably talk about it before talking about like the last couple of chapters, but I'm not 100% sure. We'll see how that goes, because if this is what it's like in the Lagdao Ruins also, that's going to be miserable, and I definitely am going to want to be able to let units die. That's the main thing, right? Because if I do it before endgame and a unit that I care about dies, then I have to reset. Whereas if I do it after endgame and a unit that I care about dies, that's fine because I'm not playing the game anymore. So, anyway, not really anything else to say about that. If you've ever been curious about, what's at the higher levels of the Tower of Valni, if you've never done it yourself. Actually, I should mention, I almost completely forgot about this. There are unique characters that you can unlock by doing the Tower of Valni and the Lagdao Ruins. They're similar conceptually to the trial map characters in FE6. However, this game doesn't have trial maps. This is like the closest that it gets. But in the sense that, like, they're characters from the main story of the game that are, not playable. They're usually villains or important NPCs. That are not playable in the main game, and their appearance in the Tower of Valni is by no means canon. They do not have any kind of They don't have any kind of like support conversations or dialogue or anything like that. They're just like fun little Easter egg characters. I believe, unlike the trial maps, because after you beat FE8, you unlock the creature campaign. And the creature campaign is essentially the series' first real post game. But all you can really do in it is like go around and fight different skirmishes with monsters and stuff, which isn't very fun, in my opinion. But you can unlock these characters by doing the Tower of Valni, and then, if I'm not mistaken, you can go and use them in other skirmishes in the creature campaign. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know that for a fact. Also worth mentioning that all of these characters can only be unlocked once you have started the creature campaign. So doing the Tower of Valni before you actually beat the game, you are not going to be able to unlock these secret characters. That would be really fun. And I think it would actually be a very good way to pad out the roster, because as it stands, one of the issues I've had with this game that I've mentioned before is how few characters there are, because it feels like every playthrough just boils down to using the same characters over and over again. I think that having those optional characters be unlockable, it maybe would throw off the story a little bit, throw off the, the vibes. But it's like later games would do this with like the DLC units you can get, and like the Hijar characters. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but like the random like characters from previous games that you can get. You can use those guys in the main story of like Awakening and Fates. So I'm not sure why, I wish they had considered that, because I think it would have been really fun to use some of these guys to spice up playthroughs of FE8. Okay, so for the full list of these characters, I guess I'll just go over the ones that you can get in the Tower of Valni. I'll save the ones from the Lagdao Ruins for when we actually get to the Lagdao Ruins. So for the Tower of Valni, once you have started the creature campaign, you can go to the Tower of Valni and you can unlock Kalik by beating the third floor of the Tower of Valni. Orson and I guess he's already playable, so that's pretty funny. You can get Orson by clearing the 6th floor of the Tower of Valni. Reeve, you need to defeat at least 200 enemies in one run-through of the Tower of Valni, which I don't fully get. I think some chapters some floors of the Tower of Valni have infinitely spawning reinforcements, so you might have to like stay behind on some maps. I think I got like 160. It does keep track for you of how many guys you kill, and like how long it took you, how many turns, and stuff like that. So I guess if you like stay on certain maps with reinforcement spam and just like grind all those guys and make sure you get 200 in one run, then you unlock Reeve. Then Ismaer you can get by clearing the Tower of Valni completely. You need to clear the 8th floor of the Tower of Valni, which is the highest floor. Ismaer, she's an interesting case too, because she's the only one, the first one so far at least, that doesn't actually have a class really in game. As opposed to like Calic and Reeve, they have their classes for when you fight them. Ismaer is a sword master in gameplay, and then Selena is also unlockable by beating the Tower of Valni completely 3 times, which sounds miserable, and this is also assuming that you haven't played it at all in the in like the main stretch of the game, because that would be then you would have to do it like multiple times. Like if you do the Tower of Valni all the way through before the creature campaign, that will not count, I don't think, for getting Selena, which is very unfortunate. There are 5 more characters that you can unlock, but they're associated with the Lagdao Ruins, so we will talk about them when we get to the Lagdao Ruins next episode. Okay, is there anything else? Let me just quickly go through my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh yeah, I did want to mention a couple of things that I was doing this for. Like, obviously I wanted to show off the Tower of Valni maps because I want to show off all, or at least as many maps as I possibly can from the entire series, and the Tower of Valni has all unique maps, so I wanted to show those off and talk about them. But it also served me an extra purpose because I was able to train up a couple of my characters. First of all, I was grinding La Rochelle's light rank. I promoted her into Valkyrie, and as I mentioned, I am planning on making her my user of Ivaldi, which is the legendary light tome. And what happens frequently, if you want to train up a character like La Rochelle, who's already going to have a pretty high staff rank, right? But she starts with so low of a light rank, or if you want to make her an anima user, you would have to train up her anima rank, and she starts with really low in both of those. I think it's D rank for light. I don't know about anima, but it'll take you forever to get there. And in the meantime, it's very possible that she'll just hit S stabs instead of getting to S in the weapon type that you want. So I took this opportunity, considering I had to kill so many enemies anyway, to spam as much light magic usage as I could and get her up to S rank light. I did manage it by the end, just barely, but I was able to bring her all the way up from D to S in light magic, which is kind of insane, but just goes to show how many enemies you actually have to kill in the Tower of Valni. Anyway, the other characters I trained, I was getting Noel's dark rank up because I wanted to use Glepnir. I'm not as worried about that, obviously, because he has like E stabs, so I'm not very worried that he's going to get S rank in anything else before he gets S rank in dark. But it still was a good opportunity because he was still kind of low. He's still only at like B rank, I think. So I took the time. I think I got him up to like a little bit past A rank. So he should be good by the time we get to the end of the game to use Glepnir. And then finally, the biggest thing that I did, the biggest sort of investment that I made during this process was that I brought Myrrh. And I figured, I'm going to have to kill all these bosses and all these promoted enemies, so I might as well get the most bang out of my buck, because she wipes out almost all of them in one hit, and gets a full level off of, especially early on, every boss and every promoted enemy. She's going to get a full level off of. So by the time that I had fully caught up, the time that I had finished the Tower of Valni completely, Myrrh was level 17 with very high stats, including capped defense and really high HP. A little bit lower on speed, I think. Maybe about average on speed. And I only used 21 of my Dragonstone uses. I do still have 29 left. Which, considering, like, there's only a few maps left in the game, and, there's you're probably going to be able to, like, I'm very confident that I'll be able to get through the rest of the game with only 29 Dragonstone uses. In fact, I didn't bring Myrrh to Chapter 17 because I didn't think she'd be that useful. So it's mostly going to be for, like, the last couple of maps where you're fighting, like, mostly monsters, or entirely monsters, I guess, where she's going to be useful. And then I'll probably also have a good amount of use for her in the Lagdao Ruins, which will be nice. Okay. Yeah, I think that's everything. There was I actually did forget to talk about one map. There's one map that has like big walls, and a lot of enemies with longbows, which is like something approaching map design. It was still annoying, but it was something approaching map design, and I felt that was worth bringing up because it felt like the designers had an idea for a map and did something interesting with it, even if it ended up being a little bit annoying, which, when I'm talking about the maps in the Tower of Valni, you guys need to understand, like, that is a very, very low bar that I'm setting there, but it's completely justified because those maps are terrible. Yeah, if you want my recommendation, unless you really want to just try it out because you're curious, or if you want to unlock the secret characters, do not go all the way through the Tower of Valni. It's just boring. It's not even like that hard. It's just tedious. But I guess if you're willing to use like save states, you can take breaks and stuff in between. So. Because that's the other thing too, right? Because you can't even turn your game off. I mean, I guess you could, because it'll be suspend data if you stop in like the middle of a map. So that's something, I guess. But you know, if you're on the battle preps and you want to stop, you have to start the map, and then just turn the game off after starting the map, which is so weird. Okay, yeah, I think that's everything for this one. So now we can move on to chapter 17, our final chapter of the episode, which is called River of Regrets. There's a flashback here where Erica and Ephraim are talking to Leon, and I found this flashback to be very interesting. Essentially, it reveals that Erica and Ephraim already knew about a couple of things related to Leon. First of all, they already knew that Vigard was sick, that he had some sort of illness. So, and obviously, like, it's a big leap to go from, Vigard is sick to Vigard died and is being puppeted like a corpse. That is not, like, something that I would expect them to come to that conclusion. But it feels weird that it, like, never came up, especially, like, before they knew that Vigard was, like, leading the charge. It's like, if they had mentioned this at some point earlier in the game, I feel like that would have made sense. Like, oh, did Vigard die because of his illness, and did someone, like, take over Grotto, and did, like, a hostile takeover? I think that's an option or a thing that they would have considered and explored more, which it feels weird that they didn't. The other thing, and this is much more, like, significant, I think, they also knew that Leon was studying and researching and using the power of Grotto's Sacred Stone. They talk about it in this conversation, and they even say, like, are we sure that's such a good idea? Some people are very, there's, like, a couple people that aren't as into the idea. Eventually, Erica and Ephraim both say, well, we know you. We know that you would never use it for selfish reasons or to benefit yourself. You'd only ever use it to help people. So, we think that it's a good idea. We think that you'll make good use of it. But it's just very strange to me that they never bring this up as, like, a possibility, right? Like, when they're talking about Leon being, like, weird or like, wondering, like, what happened to Leon, like, the fact that this never even crosses either of their minds is a little strange to me. I mean, maybe they just forgot about the conversation, right? That seems plausible. But I don't know. It seems like a cool moment for Leon, too, because he talks about how excited he was that he was able to use the power of the Sacred Stone to save a little girl's life. Because she had sustained, like, heavy burns in a fire or something like that. And he saved her, and he was so thrilled about that. It feels like a conversation that would stick out in their minds, and something that they would consider and come back to, as they question, like, what might possibly be happening with Leon or with Grotto more broadly. But they never consider it, I guess. I don't think it's, like, a huge deal or anything. I'm not like, this isn't a big criticism. I just think that there's some potential here that they could have explored, and they didn't. So I don't know. I would have liked to see that. So as the company is progressing towards Rouston, there is a situation at a river crossing, I guess in Frelia, probably. I don't actually know where this is supposed to be. But they get there, and Grotto's men are essentially attacking a group of citizens, just seemingly for no reason. I'm not really sure what they're doing here. Actually, I have no idea what the conflict of this chapter is. I have no idea, like, why Grotto is here, who they're attacking, for what reason. Doesn't make any sense to me. I think they just kind of needed to pad this out, with some stuff. but it's a good chapter, so I'm not going to complain. At least in terms of like the map design, I like this one a lot. So there are some green units running away, including a green Falcon Knight, who is our last recruitable character for the entire game. We're going to talk about her in a little bit, but for now, just know that that you can recruit her. She's a Frelian Pegasus Knight, or a Frelian Falco Knight. Falco Knight. You can recruit her by talking to her with Inez, Tana, probably any character from Frelia. I'm not actually 100% sure, but I'm assuming like Vanessa, Mulder, Gilliam, all those guys you'd be able to recruit her with. I brought Tana to this map, so I recruited her with Tana. And we'll talk about her in a little bit. But essentially the goal here is to protect the green units. It's not a defend map or anything; it's a kill boss, and we'll talk about who the boss is right now. Actually, so Leon shows up here. Leon teleports in and has a conversation with Erica and Ephraim. And a lot of the dialogue in these chapters, especially relating to Leon, is very different depending on whether you're coming off of Erica route or coming off of Ephraim route. I have talked about like the big difference, which is that in Erica route, the Demon King is fully in control of Leon, with Leon occasionally able to like get little snippets of his own willpower through by just like very briefly pushing the Demon King back down, but it's very fleeting and not something that happens very often. Whereas in Ephraim route, Leon is fully in control of himself for the most part. I do think there is a very significant part of Leon's actions that are being influenced by the Demon King, because if you think about it, right, Leon is not, if Leon wants to help people and use the power of the Sacred Stones to help people, I'm not really sure how, like, bringing monsters back into the world and, like, destroying the Sacred Stones and killing a whole bunch of people, I'm not really sure how this is helping him do that. So I do think that, like, maybe he's deluding himself, or maybe, his personality is still there and his consciousness is still there, but he's being influenced by the Demon King more than he's aware of. Like, that's the best I got, because, like, otherwise it just doesn't make any sense. I think that might be the actual answer, is that, like, they wanted to have a cool, sympathetic, tragic villain, which they did. They succeeded in that. I think Leon's a great villain. But I don't think they fully thought through, like, why he's actually doing what he's doing right now. Maybe they did. Maybe there's some stuff in later chapters that I'm forgetting about, but that's how I feel anyway. As much as I love Leon, I think that, you could definitely raise an eyebrow at a lot of the stuff he does here if you want to argue that, like, he's fully in control of his own actions. He's probably not 100% in control, but enough where he considers himself to be Leon and not the Demon King. Maybe. We'll get into that, actually. Leon doesn't really say much of consequence here. He does just kind of, like, he has, like, a little bit of a conversation with Leon, or with Ephraim and Erica, where they talk about, like, the last couple times that they met. The differences in dialogue in the substance of what Leon is saying are basically non-existent. The actual words that he's saying are pretty different, but they can convey essentially the same thing. But what I do really like about his dialogue in Ephraim route, is that it does, like, bleed through a little bit that Leon is still in there, because it is a lot more centered on, like he says, like, oh, you've always thought that Leon was weak, like, he's very like self-degradating, and he also, like, insults Ephraim and is, like, less aggressive towards Erica. Generally speaking, there's a couple examples here and there that counter that, but in Erica route, where he's fully the Demon King, he says like I'm gonna tear you limb from limb, or something like that. Whereas in Ephraim route, it's a lot more, like, subdued. So I think that's a really nice touch, and I think definitely intentional. There is a video comparing the different dialogue and the different scenes from Erica route and Ephraim route. The channel name, let me just look it up real quick, actually. So the channel name is AMF on YouTube. Now, I did notice at least one mistake, where I think it was the boss dialogue for Ephraim in this chapter, is like he said that the Erica mode version was Ephraim, and he said that he got them swapped basically, or they got them swapped. So that's one mistake. So you might want to cross-reference this with other sources if you're going to use it for the basis of any kind of like argument or thinking about the game in any way. You might want to just like double check some of this stuff, but at least most of what I've seen has been accurate. And it's a good like visual if you just want like a quick visual side-by-side comparison of the different scenes. It also does like the boss dialogue for Joshua and Cormag and the different routes, which is pretty cool. So yeah, go check that out if you're interested. Just make sure that you take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because I do know that there's at least one mistake in there. Anyway, yeah, so your goal here, Leon teleports away after being like evil or whatever, and your goal here is to kill Leon or defeat the boss, which is Leon, and that's not very hard to do. It's not like a huge distance from Leon to like your starting position, so you can have like your best units like go in and get to him pretty quickly. However, there are also some green units here that you have to protect. You don't have to, but if you do manage to save them all, then you get a rescue staff, which is very nice, especially since I forgot the warp staff. I really wanted to get that rescue staff, so just so I have like some movement like utility that I can do. So having that rescue staff was pretty nice. Now, I actually usually struggle to get this rescue staff. Most of the time, it's just because I'm not trying very hard, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's like incredibly difficult or anything. But it's certainly like there's like the guys are so squishy, and it's very easy for especially there's some like wyverns in this chapter. There's enemies that can like shoot over mountains and stuff like that. So if you're not careful, it's very easy for one of the enemies to just slip through and just blast one of the guys. In which case you would have to start the whole map over. So I usually don't bother with that. I find it a little bit, I guess not like annoying. I think it's fun to do. But just like usually by the time like I get to this point in the game, I kind of just want to like wrap up. So it's not something that I go out of my way to do most of the time. But this time I did. And it was actually really fun. I really enjoyed keeping all these green units alive. What happened for me, and I don't know if this is like how the map usually plays out for people, but the enemies near like the top of the map were pretty easy to take out. There weren't that many of them. A couple of reinforcements spawned, but for the most part, you're able to just take them out pretty quickly and move on to Leon. However, while this is happening, you're getting swarmed from the bottom. There's a lot of pre-promoted characters in this chapter. There's a lot of heroes. There's some sages. There's some paladins and Valkyries. The Valkyries are very scary. They were doubling some of my guys, which is welcome back, FE7. And there's a lot of really tough enemies that were culminating near the bottom of the map, and so I had to really struggle to stay alive. There was one guy. There was one point where Garcia was left on 1 HP at the end of enemy phase. The Phantoms really came in clutch here. The Phantoms were very helpful for baiting away attacks from characters that might otherwise have died if they got hit by too many enemy phase attacks. So yeah, another win for Phantoms, honestly. I really like these Phantoms. But I did manage to do it. I got to Leon. I killed him with like Ephraim. Tana is also really good. I give Tana my Swift Souls or my boots. So she has even higher movement now, and she's able to fly around and has really good combat. I think she capped out her speed or is very close to it. And decent strength for where she's at. So all things considered, a pretty good, a pretty fun map. Not very hard, especially again if you're not going for the rescue staff. That's actually quite easy in my opinion. But it is fun, a really enjoyable map. And if you're going out of your way to get the side objective here, then I think it adds an extra layer of challenge that makes it more enjoyable for me. Yeah, that's about all that I have to say about this map. I didn't talk about Cyrene. Good thing I checked my notes. So Cyrene, as I said, you recruit her with any of the Frelia characters, I'm pretty sure. For me, it was Tana. I'm almost 100% positive you can do it with Inez. And then I'm pretty confident you can do it with Vanessa, Mulder, and Gilliam. Vanessa is Cyrene's sister, and Gilliam is like her boyfriend, I guess, or like they're maybe like on and off again kind of thing. But they're very close, essentially. Mulder, I have no idea. But so maybe it's just Gilliam and Vanessa. Maybe Mulder can't do it. But either way, most, if not all, of the Frelia characters should do it. And Cyrene is bad. So Cyrene is a pre-promoted Falco Knight, as I said. And that's pretty nice. Falco Knights are very good. They have very good utility. They can rescue drop people. They can fly over terrain. They can be used to secure side objectives. But her stats are really, really bad. She's not doubling most of the enemies in this map, which is honestly really pathetic. If you think about it, considering like how easy it is to double enemies in this game. Like, so many characters are doubling enemies so consistently at this point. You know, like, and it's not, you know, like some of the faster enemies, sure, like the heroes or whatever, a lot of my guys weren't doubling, but I was failing to double, like, Wyvern Knights, you know, like, not particularly fast enemies. Cyrene's base speed just isn't very good, and her strength is terrible. She does have good weapon ranks, I believe. I know she has A stabs, or A lances, rather, because she joins with a silver lance that you can use. So I know that for a fact. Let me just check what she has in swords. Yeah, so Cyrene has a C rank in swords, so not super high, but like high enough for sure where you could get like you could definitely get like a decent sword rank if you really put the effort into her. But like, man, 12 strength, 15 speed, 10 defense, 27 HP. Absolutely garbage. Absolute dog shit. Oh no. Okay, so I found this out. So Cyrene actually has buffed bases from the Japanese version of the game. For some reason, in the Japanese version of the game, she has only 10 strength, 8 defense, and 10 resistance, where all of those stats got buffed by 2 in the US release. Her strength growth also got buffed a little bit. It's 35% in the Japanese version. It's 40% in the localized version. I don't think that makes a significant difference, but it's still like, what were they cooking with this unit, dog? Like, what the fuck? She also doesn't join with the sword. So, you know, if you want to have her fight, like, some of the enemies she probably could consistently beat are the axe fighters that kind of come in from the left. Or maybe some of, like, the axe-wielding heroes. You know, she'd probably get doubled, or at the very least not double them. But she could probably, like, block them with a weapon triangle advantage. But she doesn't join with the sword, so you'd have to get her one, which is not necessarily easy to do. I guess you could, like, give one to Tana, the trade onto Cyrene, but I don't know. I didn't think to do it, and I think it would have been very helpful, so maybe something to consider. But yeah, I don't, like, it's hard to, like, I can't argue that she's a bad unit. I don't think it's possible for a Falco Knight in the GBA era of games to be bad. I just don't think it's possible. Because flight utility is just so good, that I think it that by itself, you know, you could deploy her, you could find something for her to do in a lot of chapters, without ever even, deploying her. Not to mention next chapter, you know, we're not going to talk about it in this episode, but next chapter, there's the eggs, right? I might even bring her for the egg chapter, actually, because, you don't need good combat stats to beat the eggs. The eggs are so weak, that you can kill them with just about anybody. And so having, a character who's, like, really mobile, and able to fly across the gaps and get to the eggs very quickly before they can hatch, that's really good. That's gonna make a big difference, I think, in that chapter. So, and you know, even in other chapters, right, she's gonna have rescue utility and stuff like that. So, not a bad unit. I know I said she was, but I was mostly kidding. I do hate using her. I think she's so, like, she feels like Ford, but as a Falco Knight, you know? She's just, like, so mediocre. She's not, like, you know, she's not going to get, like, eviscerated by most enemies, but she's also not going to do very well against most of them. So, your mileage may vary, but I don't like using her, and I typically bench her. Maybe sometimes I'll bring her to the egg map, or the Gorgon map, but most of the time I'll just bench her either immediately or right after the Gorgon map, so. Okay, yeah, I think that's everything for this map. The chapter ends And Leon, I think Leon has another conversation. Oh, yeah, there is something actually I wanted to mention here about Leon's dialogue. So, as he's walking away, in both Erica mode and Ephraim mode, he is talking to himself. Like, no one else is around at this point, and he's just kind of, like, talking to himself. And he says, like, something, it's different in both versions, but he does say something to the effect of, like, oh, I'm the Demon King, which feels weird to me, because, like, I mean, there's a couple things we can interpret this, right? But the main concern, the main, like, question that I have is, why would he be talking about being the Demon King when there's no one else around to hear him in this moment on Ephraim route? If he wasn't actually the Demon King, then what would be the point of that? Being more generous, I think, as I said, I think it's very easy to interpret that some of the Demon King's influence is still impacting Leon, even if he's still mostly in control of himself. So it's possible that this is a moment, similarly to how on the other route, it's mostly the Demon King, but then Leon can, like, peek through every now and again. It might be that it's mostly Leon, but then the Demon King peeks through every now and again. In Ephraim mode, that's possible. I think what's more likely, though, is that they just, like, were they getting a little lazy here, maybe, I think, possibly, and they wanted to make sure that, like, they didn't make it too obvious that it was, because the fact that this is Leon is the fact that, like, Leon is in control of himself in Ephraim mode is a twist next chapter. So, they didn't want to give it away too early, but I guess for whatever reason, they didn't, like, they wanted to keep you guessing. I don't know why they didn't just have him say something more ambiguous for this dialogue in Ephraim mode, but I guess they just wanted him to say something to keep you on your toes, keep you guessing. Maybe he is the Demon King, maybe he's not, we don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's the only thing I had to say about that. Inez shows up and gives Ephraim or Erica Frelia's sacred twin relics, which are the Lance Vidofnir, and the bow Nidhogg. I don't know if I'm saying that right, maybe Nidhogg. The bow is going to Naomi, and the lance is going to Tana, ultimately. And then we already have, so I didn't mention this, the Animatome is going to Ewan. I've mentioned all of these before, I think, but the Animatome is going to Ewan, Sword's going to Marissa, the Dark Tome is going to Noel, and then the axe is going to Garcia. Actually, Garcia's already been using the axe a lot, and he's been making really good use out of it. I might need to hammer in it at some point, because it's, I don't think it's, like, low on uses, but I've been using it, like, liberally. And I think it's a very good target for the hammer and staff, honestly, because it's such a good axe, it's such a good weapon. And you want to make sure that you have as many of them as possible for endgame, of course. And then you get the rescue staff, as I said, if you save all the villagers. Okay, and then that's it. I think the thing that's happening in the story here is that, like, Ephraim catches up to Leon as he's running away, and Leon, like, goads him into following him. Or maybe, I think in Ephraim mode he does, in Erica mode I think he just runs away. But either way, they're tracking him to try to, like, find him and kill him, I guess, because, despite the fact that Grotto has fallen at this point, some pockets of resistance still remain active, and I guess the idea is that if we get rid of Leon, then they'll all kind of just, like, fall apart, which makes sense. Okay, I think that's just about everything that I have to say about these chapters. And we're getting really close to the end here. I don't, at this point, finishing by the end of June is kind of a pipe dream. I guess it's, like, still theoretically possible if I really lock in, but it's probably not going to happen. I am taking a day off next week, so it's, maybe if I really, like, bang out, like, as many recordings as I can, but I also don't want to, like, force myself and make all the episodes, like, bad and subpar. So ideally, I'll finish as soon as I can, hopefully, either, like, towards the end of June or beginning of July, maybe. But either way, it's going to be very soon, I think, because we have 2 SSS episodes left, which is going to be what we're doing next. And then we have one more episode about chapters, because we're finishing the game next episode. There's only, like, 4 chapters left. There's 4 chapters and then the Lagdal Ruin, so it's going to be, like, a longer episode. It's going to be a very long play session for me, or, like, set of play sessions, I guess. And then we have, of course, the wrap-up episode and whatever I want to do regarding Ephraim and Erica. So theoretically, we probably have 4, maybe at the absolute most we have 5 episodes left, but probably 4, which is pretty good. And 2 of those are going to be SSS episodes, which are pretty quick, all things considered. So anyway, that is it for me in regards to Fire Emblem 8 for today. Let's take a look at the news. I don't believe there's been anything major, but I could be wrong. So there's not much in the way of news this week. In fact, there's nothing. All of this stuff that was on Center's Forest is all stuff that I already knew about, which is good for me because I really want to talk about what I've been playing and watching since last time. I don't think I've played anything new. I know Deltarune just came out, like the new chapters. I have not played Deltarune at all. I plan to get around to it once the entire game is out in a few years. But I know people have been really excited about chapters 3 and 4, I believe, is what came out. So yeah, but I haven't. You know, if you've been playing that, I hope you've been enjoying it. But not me. In fact, I don't think I've played anything. I'm pretty sure that I mentioned last time that I had played Bastion. But if not, I played Bastion and I played Luigi's Mansion also. I'm pretty sure I talked about both of those. But both of those were like fine. Luigi's Mansion was like fine. Bastion was pretty good. I like Bastion. But what I've been doing a lot of is watching anime. I've been watching a lot of anime and logging it all. I do have an Annie list. I mostly talk about my backlog, but I do have an Annie list. Again, at IMAMillerKirby or whatever the user URL thing is. And I've been binging anime like crazy the past couple weeks. Let me just take a look at what I've logged just in the past, since the last episode alone. Since the last episode, I have watched Love Live. That was the first thing I watched, which Love Live is... Okay, so I like to think that I have matured past the point... I mean, I'm 26 years old. I have matured past the point where I give a fuck about what other people's opinions are on what I do with my free time. However, I have to admit that even I live alone and I don't have any roommates or anything like that. But I live completely by myself. But even I, I had this sense where I had to keep looking over my shoulder to see if anybody was judging me, because Love Live is very I mean, it's a high school idol show or whatever. But I've heard really good things about it. I have a lot of friends who really like it. And I decided to give it a shot, and I thought it was pretty good. I have, I mean, I don't want to say I have criticisms of it. It's mostly just a lot of the episodes are kind of boring. I didn't love a lot of what was a lot of the middle of each of the seasons, especially. I thought the movie was pretty good. I only watched the original Love Live with Muse. I haven't started Sunshine. I do want to get around to that soon, but I have not started Sunshine at all. But then after Love Live, I watched Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which was really good. It's only 10 episodes. It's very short, and it's a great anime, great a short story about the world of Cyberpunk. I haven't played Cyberpunk 2077, the video game. This anime didn't necessarily get me interested in the game. But I'm certainly not opposed to playing it at some point. But just even putting aside the game, I think the anime and the setting and the world that it's in is just really cool. And the characters are all great. I really like David and Lucy and a few of the other important characters. Then I watched Revue Starlight. Revue Starlight is ostensibly, especially at first blush, similar to Love Live. It's a lot of singing, and it's a lot of high school girls singing, but it's not like Love Live. Love Live is just about an idol group, but Revue Starlight is a completely different thing. It's essentially about a group of people in an all-girls musical theater school, who all after school go to this extra dimensional pocket dimension or metaphysical is the word I'm looking for. It's like this ambiguously real place underneath the school, or maybe it might be underneath Tokyo Tower. Actually, I don't remember. It's one of the, maybe it's both. I don't fucking remember, to be honest. They go and they fight in these like actual like sword fights. Or I guess some of them use like different types of weapons, but they fight like actual real battles called reviews. And to figure out like who's the best actor of all time or something like that. And it's very like, I don't like a lot of the actual events on like playing out on screen aren't necessarily meant to be read like literally. I don't think it's very, I don't want to say like metaphorical or symbolic because that makes it sound very pretentious, but it feels very, surreal, I guess maybe is the right word. It's hard to put into words, but let me tell you guys, I loved Revue Starlight. It was really, really, really good. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The music, the songs, and the revues themselves are all incredible. And some of the best fights in all anime, in my opinion, come from both the show and then also the follow-up movie, which was both of which were extremely good, but especially the movie. I really liked the fights in that one. So definitely highly recommend checking that out if you're even at all interested in the premise. I watched the movie for Madoka Magica. I watched Madoka Magica a very long time ago. It's one of the first anime I ever watched, actually, I'm pretty sure. And I thought it was good. And I liked it quite a bit. And but I never got around to watching the Rebellion movie, which is like the follow-up sequel movie. And I did that for the first time like a week ago. And it was good. I liked it a lot as well. Then I hopped on Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which is the next installment in Gundam. I think I hadn't finished Victory Gundam when I last time I think I was still on Victory Gundam. I think I was still in the middle of watching Victory Gundam when last episode went out. But I finished Victory Gundam and that was pretty good. But G Gundam was up next, and G Gundam is very different. It's actually a super robot show as opposed to a real robot show. Super robot shows are a lot more like shonen anime-esque, and in fact, super robot shows actually predate the shonen genre by like a lot. Maybe not by like a lot, but like a good like solid few years. And is where a lot of the inspiration for what would become shonen battle manga eventually came from. Which is really cool, and G Gundam is extremely fucking good. It is by far, so far, my favorite Gundam series, and I'm very excited, like, I was very happy to watch it, and I'm very excited about continuing in Gundam, for the next few, I mean, this is the only Super Robot Gundam show, as far as I'm aware, and I know tonally they go back to more like the older stuff. Gundam Wing is up next. I actually just started that today. I watched an episode a little bit earlier. It was quite good, in that one episode. I don't know if it'll stay good, but I liked it so far. And then the only other thing I watched, I say only as if I haven't gone through like 6 anime already, but I also started and actually finished the first season of Blood Blockade Battlefront, or Kekai Sensen, if you prefer the Japanese name. That's one of those ones where the English name is just such a mouthful that Kekai Sensen just kind of rolls off the tongue better for me. But yeah, so that was pretty good. I like that. I think the ending was a little bit disappointing of the first season. And I'm kind of excited to see where the second season goes. Although I know that like my personal favorite character is not going to be in the second season. And I don't know like how that's going to play out. But I thought it was pretty good for what it was. It could have been better for sure, but it was all right. Yeah, that's all. I really, really liked, I think if I had to just pick, a couple, G Gundam for sure, even if you don't care about Gundam, if you're interested in like getting into Gundam somewhere, I guess G Gundam is a bad recommendation for a first Gundam show, right? Because it's nothing like the rest of the series for the most part. I think in terms of like theming, and plot direction, I think that it does have some similarities, but tonally, it is very different. So if you like G Gundam, you might not necessarily like the rest of Gundam, and if you dislike G Gundam, you might not necessarily dislike the rest of Gundam. But it is a very fun show, and I highly recommend it, especially if you are a fan of other Super Robot stuff. If you, I'm trying to think, modern Super Robot, I don't know a lot of modern Super Robot anime. I'm not sure if Bravern is Super Robot or Real Robot, but that's like the only one that comes to mind. There's like Gridman and Dynazenon, which is not, especially I think Gridman is not technically a mech show, but like it has a lot of the same trappings and things like that. And then the other one, obviously, I gave glowing praise to it. Revue Starlight, please watch Revue Starlight. Even if you don't think it's normally going to be your thing, give it a couple episodes. Just see if you vibe with it, because it's by episode 3, I was completely hooked. And I'm not normally an advocate of the 3-episode rule. I don't think you need 3 episodes for Revue Starlight to be like good. I think you need 3 episodes for Revue Starlight to be like amazing. But it's still got its claws in me pretty quickly. So. All right, I think that's about everything. This episode, I'm at the recording time for recording time. I'm at 2 hours and 5 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and end there. And hopefully this doesn't take too long to edit down. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place today, so sorry about that. I think it's been a long day. It's been so fucking hot. I think my brain's fried a little bit. But I really wanted to make sure I got this episode out because I'm very excited to wrap up this game. I'm really looking forward to the last few chapters and doing the last few support episodes. Partially because I really want to wrap up FE8 because it's a good game and I like it, but also because I'm very excited to get into Tellius. I'm really looking forward to the Tellius games. Okay, that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.